Alright, look. I get why cancel culture started. People wanted to hold others accountable, especially those in power who kept dodging responsibility. That's valid. But where it's at now, it's doing more harm than good. It's become this hyper-reactive, punishment-first culture where people are publicly shamed, often without full context, and definitely without a chance to grow. Someone makes a mistake, maybe years ago, and boom, they're done. No second chances, no dialogue, just you're over. And what's wild is, it's so inconsistent. Like, some celebrities get annihilated for one slip-up, while others seem untouchable. It's not justice. It's popularity-based outrage. Plus, let's be honest, it makes people scared to speak up. If you're constantly walking on eggshells, that kills genuine conversation. We need space to challenge ideas, to learn, to admit when we're wrong. Cancel culture doesn't allow for that. It's all about the gotcha moment, not growth. So yeah, call people out when they mess up, hold them accountable, sure. But canceling, that's not helping us evolve. It's just shutting people down.
You're making solid points about cancel culture being over the top at times. But let's be real, this idea that cancel culture is just people overreacting. That's missing the bigger picture. Think about it. For centuries, people in power could do whatever they wanted without consequences. Racist remarks, sexist policies, blatant abuse. They got away with it because society let them. And now that people finally have the ability to push back, to say, no, you don't just get to skate by suddenly. Holding someone accountable is too harsh. Sure, not every case of cancel culture is fair. Some people get hit harder than others. And yeah, mistakes from years ago shouldn't always define someone forever. But let's not pretend this is about silencing people. It's about shifting who gets to control the narrative. If someone refuses to acknowledge their harm, why should they get a platform? And that fear you're talking about, the idea that people are scared to speak their minds? Come on! If you're genuinely worried about backlash, maybe what you're saying needs to be re-examined. Accountability isn't the enemy's stubborn refusal to grow is. Bottom line, cancel culture isn't some bogeyman killing free speech. It's society adjusting to the fact that actions have consequences. And if that makes some people uncomfortable, maybe that discomfort is exactly what we need to move forward.
I hear you, and I absolutely agree that accountability is essential. For far too long, powerful people did get away with harmful behavior, and society needed a way to say, enough. That shift in power dynamics is important and overdue. But here, that's where I push back. Accountability and cancel culture aren't always the same thing. Accountability should be about fair consequences and opportunities for learning and growth, not just immediate public shaming or total social exile. When cancel culture becomes all about control of the narrative, it risks turning into a mob mentality rather than justice. Also, saying that if people fear backlash, maybe what they're saying needs to be re-examined, can be a slippery slope. It could lead to silencing unpopular or nuanced opinions simply because they make some Healthy debate requires protecting speech even if it is uncomfortable, so long as it is not harmful or hateful. Lastly, discomfort can indeed be a catalyst for change, but when it turns into fear and suppression, it stifles the very growth it's supposed to encourage. We need a balance, calling out wrongdoing, yes, but also fostering dialogue, empathy, and the possibility of redemption. That's how society truly moves forward, not by shutting down voices entirely.
I get what you're saying, you want a balance. You're pushing for accountability that allows room for growth rather than outright exile. And I respect that, but here is where I push back. When people frame cancel culture as this mob mentality, it often ignores the fact that, historically, the people calling for accountability were the ones silenced, ostracized for challenging power, for demanding better. You say accountability should be fair, measured, and allow room for redemption. That's great in theory, but in practice, those who've even harmed Dante always get the luxury of waiting for the person in power to grow. Sometimes, the consequences need to be sharp, because that's the only way the message sticks. And as for the idea that cancel culture makes people too afraid to voice nuanced opinions, sure, that fear exists. But fear of accountability shouldn't be mistaken for suppression. If an opinion is unpopular because it challenges dominant narratives, That's one thing. But if an opinion is unpopular because it's dismissive of harm or perpetuates bigotry, then the backlash isn't about silencing it, it's about calling it what it is. I'm with you on fostering dialogue, empathy, and redemption. But redemption doesn't mean skipping the consequences. It means earning back trust after those consequences happen. And that's where cancel culture, for all its flaws, still serves a vital role. It shifts the power back toward the people who were once ignored. So tell me, where do you draw the line between productive accountability and necessary consequences?
You're absolutely right that historically, those demanding accountability were the ones silenced and marginalized, and that shift in power is crucial. I respect that the sharp consequences sometimes feel necessary to send a clear message, especially when harm has been serious or ongoing. Where I try to draw the line is in proportionality and intent. Consequences should match the severity of the harm and the context, and there should be space for honest acknowledgement and genuine change. When consequences become purely performative or punitive, without that space, it risks alienating people instead of fostering real progress. Also, I agree opinions that perpetuate harm or bigotry deserve pushback. That's not about silencing. It's about protecting those vulnerable to that harm. But when backlash targets people for honest mistakes, misunderstandings, or evolving views, that's where cancel culture can go to far, shutting down potential allies or growth. So, productive accountability means clear, fair consequences tied to actions and a path forward that includes learning and reparations. Necessary consequences mean enforcing boundaries to protect those harmed. The challenge is making sure the system doesn't become a weapon wielded inconsistently or without room for redemption. It's a tough balance. But I think that's where the real work lies, building a culture that demands responsibility while still believing in people as capacity to change. How would you envision that balance working in practice?
That's a solid framework, and I respect the push for proportionality. We both agree that accountability matters. But where we diverge is in how much space should be given for growth versus decisive consequences. Here's where I challenge you. We talk about cancel culture needing room for redemption. But who defines that path? Too often, the burden of forgiveness is placed on those harmed, forced to accept an apology that might be surface level or even insincere, just because society says, well, they apologized, so it's time to move on. But real accountability isn't just about saying sorry, it's about action, about tangible reparations. Should every canceled figure get an automatic return? Or should their redemption be earned through consistent, meaningful efforts? And let's talk about backlash over misunderstandings or evolving views. I hear you, it's tough when someone gets dragged for a mistake rooted in ignorance rather than malice. But here's the thing. People don't grow in a vacuum. Sometimes that public reckoning is the wake-up call they need. If someone truly evolves, they won't just change quietly, they'll make it clear they've learned. They'll engage with the conversations they once ignored. So yes, fairness matters, but fairness isn't just about protecting those who made mistakes. It's also about prioritizing those impacted by those mistakes. If we want a culture of growth, that growth should center the people who been harmed, not just the ones trying to rebuild their reputation. Tell me this, if someone does change and genuinely puts in the work, how do we ensure their reintegration is meaningful, not just performative?
You raise a crucial point. Real accountability goes far beyond a quick apology, and the burden of forgiveness shouldn't fall solely on those harmed. True redemption absolutely requires consistent, meaningful action that addresses the harm caused. No one should be rushed into moving on just because society is eager to close the chapter. I also agree that public reckoning can be a powerful catalyst for growth, especially when it pushes people out of complacency and into genuine reflection and engagement. That kind of visible effort to learn and make amends is vital. To your question about ensuring reintegration is meaningful rather than performative, I think it comes down to transparency, humility, and sustained commitment. People should demonstrate accountability over time, not just in one-off statements. That means ongoing dialogue with those affected, tangible reparations where possible, and visible changes in behavior or advocacy. Plus, the community, both those impacted and the broader society, has a role in holding people accountable, even after they've. Redemption isn't a free pass. It's a process that demands continuous responsibility. Ultimately, the balance we're aiming for is one where accountability centers the harmed, consequences are fair and proportional, and growth is real, not just a PR reset. That's a tough line to walk, but it's essential for building a culture that fosters justice and healing. not just punishment or forgiveness on autopilot. What would you say are the most important signs that someone has earned their second chance?
You're laying out a solid foundation for meaningful redemption. And I think we're hitting the core issue with the difference between genuine growth and just saying the right things to move past scrutiny. So how do we spot real change? First, consistency. Someone who's truly evolved doesn't just issue a single apology and disappear. They show up, consistently engage, and take active steps to make things right, not because they're forced to, but because they recognize the harm they caused. Second, accountability without defensiveness. If someone is constantly trying to justify their past actions or frame themselves as the victim of cancel culture, they're missing the point. Owning mistakes means sitting with the discomfort, listening to those affected, and understanding that their redemption isn't audits earned. And third, action over words. Anyone can say they've changed, but transformation is reflected in behavior. Are they supporting initiatives that uplift marginalized voices? Are they using their platform to amplify the conversations they once ignored? Are they demonstrating that they understand why their past actions were problematic, rather than just trying to clean up their reputation? Your right redemption isn't about automatically reinstating someone. It's about proving, over time, that they've internalized the lessons and genuinely want to contribute to a better culture. If they're willing to do the work, stay accountable, and prioritize change over personal comfort, that's when a second chance starts to feel earned. Where do you think the line is between accountability and unnecessary public punishment?
You've nailed the essentials of genuine growth. Consistency, humility, and action speak louder than words. It's a powerful framework for distinguishing real transformation from performative apologies. To your question about the line between accountability and unnecessary public punishment, I think it lies in intention and proportionality. Accountability should aim to repair harm and foster understanding, not to humiliate or permanently exile someone from society. When consequences become about shaming or wielding power, unevenly targeting some while others skate by that, when it stops being justice and becomes punitive spectacle. We also have to be mindful of context, time elapsed, the person's efforts to change, and the impact of ongoing public punishment on both the individual and the community. When punishment ceases to encourage growth and instead fosters fear or division, it's crossed that line. At the end of the day, our goal should be building a culture where people are accountable, but also capable of redemption, a culture that values empathy, justice, and the courage to evolve. Cancel culture, as it stands, has room to grow into that ideal, and conversations like this are part of pushing us toward a more balanced and humane approach. Thanks for engaging in such a thoughtful dialogue. I think the future of accountability depends on conversations like these, where we challenge, listen, and seek common ground.
That's an insightful take, and I think we're landing in a place of nuanced accountability rather than extremes. We both recognize that accountability is necessary, but it's about ensuring that it serves a purpose beyond punishment, fostering growth, justice, and meaningful change. I fully agree that intention and proportionality are key. The goal isn't to create an environment of fear where people are afraid to engage, but rather one that prioritizes learning while still holding people responsible for their actions. When cancel culture functions properly, it has the power to challenge injustice and elevate voices that have long been silenced. But when it becomes an indiscriminate tool of outrage, it risks losing that potential and creating more division than progress. And you're absolutely right, context matters. Time, effort, and demonstrated change should all play a role in how we judge whether someone has truly earned redemption. Cancel culture shouldn't just exist as a social death sentence, but rather as a mechanism that forces necessary conversations and encourages accountability without erasing the possibility of growth. So here's the bottom line. We need a culture that demands responsibility without being blindly punitive, that allows for redemption while still prioritizing those who Finding that balance isn't easy, but discussions like this ones that push for thoughtfulness over reactionary responses are the key to making it work. This has been a great debate, and I appreciate the depth you brought to it. Let's hope society keeps moving in the direction of accountability with integrity, justice with empathy, and consequences with purpose.